This war spanned over 4 administrations. From your perspective of actually being in Afghanistan for stretches of time at a time, where do you think the blame lies?
I mean, I think that at the end of the day, the Afghans need to also take responsibility for their country. No country can really fight for you. And as we saw with Afghans leaving, if Afghans are not willing to fight for their country, how can other countries sort of be expected to fill that void? I think, of course, the US does have certain degrees of blame in turning a blind eye to the corruption in a lot of the military equipment, may have not been best suited to the Afghan fighting style. These are, guerrilla sort of trench warfare fighters if you go back to the Soviet war days. So things like having an $80 million air force, while it might look really fancy, it's not probably the most practical thing for an Afghan fighting force. So there are certainly those things which the US and its partners really need to look at. But I do think at the end of the day, um, Afghans need to look at themselves. They need to look at what they did wrong because no one can fight for your country but you. And what we sort of saw was that Afghans at the end of the day often didn't have that sense of patriotism or willingness to sort of hold that fight. They don't, I hate to generalize, but there wasn't that mammoth love for country that I've seen in other places. For many Afghans, it was more about sort of collecting a paycheck and making sure that they could bring food home to feed their families. And so I think that in any country, unless you're willing to sort of stand up and fight and to defend it, you are never going to win.
Hollie McKay, thank you so much for joining me.